I'm just going to say this is my Christmas thing to you, my Christmas advice. To give the people in your life a little bit of grace. Hi, and welcome to Kathleen's Place, today and every day. Remember, this is a safe place to share and to comment. Now, today we're going to be talking about not making excuses with CFS. Let me rephrase that. When we say we can't do something, we're not making an excuse. So there was somebody, one of my subscribers, one of my followers, asked me to do a video on how you can understand or work with somebody who has CFS, possibly in your church, school group, at work. So this is the thing with people with CFS. We're kind of like a battery. And our battery is generally half full. Whereas even after we have a full day's rest, our battery is half full or less. So typically, a person without a chronic illness or any illness, a healthy human being, your battery is generally full. Once you've had a good night's sleep, your battery's full. You can go for a good 12 to 14 hours, whether it's going to work, cooking and cleaning, helping out in church or at school, and doing all these extra activities apart from your regular life. Well, that's not the case for people with chronic fatigue syndrome. We have to manage our energy. We have to save our energy. If you have an old cell phone that you have to charge it constantly because the battery keeps dying on it, well, that's kind of like what we're like. Even we can be young. Doesn't matter what age you have can have chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's kind of like a marathon, right? A lot of people say life is a marathon. Well, and that's true. But so is somebody with chronic fatigue syndrome. Our daily life is a marathon. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we have to take things slow. Okay, so, or we can get a flare-up or a crash very easily. Now, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome probably 6 years ago. Not probably, I was. And the doctor didn't really tell me what the symptoms were, what I needed to be careful for, what to do to manage my chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, it could be because he didn't know a lot about it, right? He knows the symptoms. I was diagnosed first in emergency, which if they told me I was in too much of a panic because I didn't understand what was happening with my body, that it went over my head, or they just might have mentioned these chronic fatigue syndrome words, which I had no idea what that meant. All they told me was that stress was causing my sickness. But they never tell you how to deal with it. So I have had to investigate on YouTube, and I started doing that just over this past probably year and a half. I tried to manage it on my own. I realized that I had to pace myself. That was something that my body just wouldn't let me not do. I had to pace myself. But as I'm watching these specialists on chronic fatigue syndrome, they say that as they're teaching us how to manage our chronic fatigue so that we're not going to have an episode or a huge crash, they say when you're pacing yourself, which means this, okay? I've got a day to do whatever, right? So you learn how much you can handle in a day, how much activity you can handle in a day. Now, every day might be a little bit different, but we're supposed to try to only use that, like the same amount of energy every day. Not more. Less, but not more. So some of us can do 3 hours, not in a row, but 3 hours in a total day. Now, think about that, right? On an average human being, who works full time will work 8 hours a day. They'll do their dishes. They might throw in some laundry. They might go volunteer at school for a special activity. They might volunteer in church. They might volunteer at the nursing home or somewhere else. And so their days, people's days are usually, 14-hour days. When you include all of the housework and everything else. So we don't generally have energy to do volunteering anywhere because our regular life tires us out enough. So for myself, leaving the house takes my energy. Just leaving. Like around noon, I think, today. Or maybe a little bit earlier. Not much earlier, because I think I slept until 10:30. I'm doing Vlogmas shorts. And this one is actually a little bit about Christmas too. But, which I'll touch on, closer to the end. All I did is put on my shoes and my jacket, put my dog's jacket on him. We went 3 houses down from ours, or maybe 2. No, just 2 from ours. Walked that far, which obviously is not very far. And did my Vlogmas video, came back, and I was already tired. What else did I do today? I made my bed. That's about it. And I was already exhausted. So I had to lay down and take a nap for a couple hours. And I fell asleep right away. And then, so now I have a little bit more energy to do my video. Now for me, doing videos, YouTube videos, is not as exhausting as working in the office. Things that trigger chronic fatigue syndrome. Now these are just a few. There's way more than this, but these are just a few that can trigger a crash or an episode, because we can go along, even though we have chronic fatigue all the time, it's not something that comes and goes. It's our energy that comes and goes. And so I'm going to give you some triggers of the chronic fatigue episode or a crash. Having conversations. To me, that's tiring. And to many other people, if you're already fatigued, think about this, right? Everybody will get fatigued once in a while. It's part of life. So if you've ever been fatigued, you know that it just hits you and you got to fall asleep. Or you got to sit down and relax. Well, for us, that's our life, right? That's how we live. So, if you've ever been exhausted or extremely fatigued, you know that talking to somebody or listening to somebody will fatigue you even more. So that will trigger either a crash or an episode. If it's a heated discussion or an argument, it's worse. Because it's mental and physical exhaustion or exertion that causes these crashes or these episodes. So what's a crash? A crash is when basically you're in bed for 2 or 3 days minimum. It can be longer. My crashes usually last 2 to 3 days, but then getting back up to my 2 to 3 hours that I can actually be active, and by active I mean doing YouTube videos, doing dishes, doing a load of laundry, things like that. I've got about 2 to 3 days that I have to, hours that I have to pace out through the day. So 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 15 minutes here, adding up to that 2 or 3 hours. Right? I used to, when I didn't have chronic fatigue syndrome, I would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, get my kids ready, get breakfast ready, get lunches ready, send my kids off to school, send my husband off to work, make his lunch, or sometimes he'd make his lunch. A lot of times he would actually make his own lunch. And then I would do the laundry and clean the house. Dusting was something that I've never enjoyed doing, but I do it when I have to. But anyhow, another thing that will trigger a crash or CFS is just doing too much in a day. If I go above my 3 hours, chances are I'm going to have a crash. And each of us have different symptoms, different triggers, and another trigger, and different amounts of time. Sorry, that's what I was going to say. Different amounts of time that we can actually give or do something in a day. Now, to you, doing something is getting up and doing something. To us, doing something might be, like I said, talking. I can do YouTube videos, but I can't do as much work in my office because there's more exertion there. I have to think for YouTube video, but not as much. So another thing that will trigger is people that you care about or that are supposed to care about you not believing you, telling you that you're crazy, it's in your head, it's an excuse. It's not. It is proved that it is an illness, it is a disease. And when people don't believe you, it's worse when it's your family. But when other people around you don't believe you and they're, that makes it worse. That truly makes it worse. So you don't want to be doing that. When somebody has a chronic illness, you can't see their sickness. It's inside of them. Sometimes you can see that they might be a little worse because their eyes might be, like this. They can hardly keep their eyes open. For me, I can't go to church. I can't go out to the mall just whenever I want to. I stopped driving because of chronic fatigue syndrome. I hate that because it causes me to lose an independence that I have. Exercise. I love exercise. I love going for long walks, brisk walks, but I cannot do that anymore. We used to take my son and I, before I was having my huge crashes, we would go for a couple hour walks with just by ourselves, or when my mother-in-law came to visit, the three of us would go for walks. And that's something that I really miss doing. I enjoy doing aerobics. I enjoy, going to the gym. Now, I would go on with this, but I'm going to cut it short. But I am going to, every Monday, I will have a chronic fatigue video so you can learn more about it. And like I've said in other ones, it's not just for me sharing my story. It's so that you can understand other people that are in your life, right? So I'm just going to say, this is my Christmas thing to you, my Christmas advice. To give the people in your life a little bit of grace, right? Those of you in church, some people with chronic fatigue are not going to be willing to tell you that they have chronic fatigue syndrome or that they have a chronic illness. So if somebody tells you that they can't help, just believe them, accept it. Because you don't know what's going on in their life. Have grace for people. Whether it's at school, church, sports team. You don't know what's going on in people's life. This video is a little bit longer than normal, but I just really encourage you to please have grace for people around you. If they say they can't, a lot of times, generally, it's very rarely that it's because somebody's lazy. Yeah, there are lazy people out there, so just ignore them too. Not ignore them, but whatever. It's people that have chronic fatigue syndrome. It's more likely that they used to volunteer a lot, they used to do a lot of work, and now they just can't anymore because their body won't allow them. So anyhow, thank you very much to the subscriber who asked me to do this video. I appreciate you very much, and I hope it helps. If you have any other questions, anybody have questions about chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic illness, now of course I'm not a specialist in this. I have chronic fatigue syndrome, and I have to learn how to live my life to the fullest of my norm now. So thank you very much for joining me. Remember, you're welcome here today and every day. Take care. Bye-bye.